Hi, my name is Jacob Monk. Welcome to this video about Americanism. What is Americanism? Well, Americanism is the idea that America must be the leading country in the whole world, not only in economical sense, but also in military sense and in ideological sense, and of course in religious sense. That means that Protestantism, the dominant religion in USA, shall be the dominant religion in the whole world. Americanism is a very aggressive religion, a very regressive variation of the Calvinist religion, because you have to remember that America was founded by Calvinists coming from Scotland. They came with a boat called Mayflower, and they were the first colonialists to start up Manhattan, start up New York, and start up the colonization of the whole American continent. And they had the Calvinist idea that if you want to find out if you are going to heaven or not, you will have to test how much success you will have in this world. If you earn a lot of money, you get a lot of sex, and you have a lot of power, a lot of social prestige, that means that God wants you to be successful. And the reason He wants you to be successful is because you are going to heaven after this life. Calvinism, they believed, like Luther, that everything was pre-decided. God had decided, according to Calvin, how you should live your life and if you would go to heaven or hell after the death. That means you don't have any kind of personal freedom, no freedom of will. You don't need any kind of morality, because everything is pre-decided by God before you were even born. And when you want to earn a lot of money, and that's all what you care about, you don't care if you kill thousands of people, or like President Obama, he's been killing several million, mostly Muslims around the world in his campaigns against Syria, against Libya, and against other countries. Well, he's a mass killer, certainly. He's a criminal man, but he will not be tried at any court. You can be sure about that, because he's too powerful because of Americanism. And the Americanist ideology says that because you're going to heaven, and all the poor people, they're going to hell. That's why they are poor. This is the Calvinist idea. That's why the Americans has the right to bomb all over the world to get their will and to dominate everywhere in every country on this planet. And they are so lucky in America, because here in Denmark and in Europe, there are a lot of political prostitutes. The whole European Parliament, our local parliaments, they are filled up with political prostitutes trying to do the will of the Americans, even trying to do the will of the Americans when it harms themselves. For example, when the Americans say you're not allowed to trade with Russia because then you support the Russians, we are against the Russians. Well, Russia is just beside Europe, so it would be very profitable for us to trade with Russia, but we're not allowed to do that because of the Americans. They even want us to buy American energy to heat up our houses, although Russia is lying few kilometers from where we live, and there are millions of gallons of natural gas and other kind of energy resources. So the Americans want to harm Europe, and that is possible because of the political idiots I would call them political prostitutes, the Euro trash running Europe from the European Parliament and from the parliaments in London, in Copenhagen, in Berlin, and in Paris and elsewhere. Well, maybe we're going to have a third world war. And one of the reasons for this is Americanism, because Americanism is promoted by the American medias, run by big Jewish economical concerns, conglomerates running most of America, all television networks, all papers are owned by them, and actually every kind of politics in America is run by big business and big business Jews. Why? Because you're not able to be a president or politicians in America at all if you don't support the big Jewish business, because they're paying for your electoral campaign. And if you don't support them, they'll not support you and you'll not get elected. That's why money is running America, not the voters. Americanism is the idea that America is the best country in the world and therefore they have the right to decide everything, even if they have to destroy and kill the population in other countries. That's no problem, because Americans, according to Calvinist religion, they are called by God. USA is the country of God. That's what they call themselves. So they have the right to do everything. And they even have the right to rewrite the history. For example, when Americans, they tell you, they publish some Hollywood movies where you can see it. These Hollywood movies, they are seen in Europe, and people believe that what they see in a Hollywood movie, this is the truth. For example, the idea that the Americans, they liberated Europe from Nazism. They produced several thousand American Hollywood films with that concept. But this is a historical lie. It was not Americans who liberated Europe for Nazism. It was the Russians. Well, here in Denmark, where 40 Russian soldiers were killed liberating our small island called Bornholm. 0 Americans were killed liberating Denmark for Nazism 1945. In whole Europe, 27 million Russians were killed fighting against Adolf Hitler. Around 300,000 Americans were killed fighting Adolf Hitler. That is around 1% of the Russians. So you have to understand that the American invasion in Europe, it should have been in 1941. How comes it was in 1944 instead? Well, the war started in 1940. Then the Americans should invade in 1941, but they invaded in 1944. Why? Because they were afraid that the Russian would liberate whole Europe, and then Europe would be some kind of influential sphere for the Russians, just like some other countries became member of the Warsaw Pact after the Second World War. Well, you have to understand that the Warsaw Pact was made after NATO. And nowadays we don't have any Warsaw Pact. We still have NATO. And NATO is the tool of Americanism, the tool of ideological indoctrination in American way of thinking. And the American way of thinking is that everything is okay as long as it benefits USA. And if it is not benefiting USA, then it is not okay, no matter what it happened. They don't care about democracy, they don't care about human rights, they don't care about anything. Only are you for or against USA? That's how George Bush said it, either you are for us or you are against us. He didn't tell about democracy, about morals, about creating a good world, because he didn't care. Americanism is a national racist ideology trying to destroy the non-American world to benefit the American world. And is based on lies, the lie of Second World War, and also the lie of the Holocaust mythology. It is basic mythology in USA and in Americanism. Why? Because the Americans believe that the Europeans, they had a responsibility for the Holocaust, and therefore they have a low moral standard. It's not only the Germans. They say, no, the Poles, all the Germans, the Frenchmen, the Danes, the Italy, the Spanish, they all had a responsibility for the Holocaust because they all helped Adolf Hitler. But the reality is that Holocaust, we don't have the freedom to discuss Holocaust in Europe, because a part of this Americanism is that freedom of press is a bad thing if it is existing anywhere else than in US. In US you have the right to say what you want, but of course if you are in opposition you only have a very, very small voice compared to the television networks and the big papers. But in Europe you don't even have a small voice, because, for example, in Germany, if you don't believe in the mythology of the Holocaust, you will immediately go to jail. You are not allowed to discuss it. If you don't believe that the world is round, you believe it's flat. You can see on the internet a lot of programs promoting the idea that the world is flat, it's not round. Okay, if you believe that, it's no problem. In Germany you can say what you want. But if you don't believe that 6 million Jews were killed in the Holocaust, then you'll go to jail in Poland, Germany and France. And this is the result of Americanism. Americanism is the opposite of freedom, the opposite of democracy, and the opposite of an independent Europe. That's why Europe cannot be a real Europe before we have our own culture back. Once, years back, before First World War, we had a real European culture, which was not just a copycat of the American culture. We want changes to change back to the times where we had our own culture. So the world is a world with many cultures and many independent countries. Today, only the BRICS countries are more or less independent from USA, and that is China, Russia, India, South Africa, Brazil. They are the 5 main countries in BRICS. And as a matter of fact, only Russia and China is really independent of the American ideology. And you have to remember, when Americans always talk about democracy, in all NATO countries combined, there are living less people than in China. So if China and Russia has some kind of idea, and all the NATO countries united has another idea, and this should be decided in a democratic way, then China and Russia should be the majority, and the decision should be the one that China and Russia is promoting. Because there are more Chinese and Russians than there are American, Frenchmen, Germans, Britons and people in all the rest of the NATO countries. So NATO is not a majority alliance, it is a minority alliance. It is an extension of the American foreign minister. It's a tool for promoting American militarism and Americanist ideology, not a tool for democracy, not a tool for freedom. Well, I think I've said a lot of things, and now it's up to you to use your brain to study these matters. Using your Google search machine, you will find a lot of news. And why don't you start up going to one of the best websites on the internet when it comes to news? And this website, it is a Russian website called Sputnik.com. Go there and you will meet all the news you read in the American papers, but seen from another point of view. That will make you quite a bit brighter, because freedom is also freedom of thinking, and you can't have any freedom of thought if you don't have the right to see the reality from different angles. Just in a court, you have a defendant and a prosecutor. You have two persons seeing the case from two different angles. The same way you have to study the world. So go to Sputnik.com and learn more about the world that you will when you see only the American medias. And in most Danish citizens, in most Danish capitals, for example here in Copenhagen, we can only see American channels. That's why most Danes are brainwashed with American ideology. And they don't even know that the politicians they choose, the only politicians they can choose, they are all political prostitutes run and financed by USA. That is not good. Thank you for listening.